Most of us here in Oklahoma recently have been experiencing near triple-digit temperatures and really bright, sunny days that really has kind of taken a toll on the summer garden this year. However, as the summer garden begins to wane and begins to go out, we now need to start thinking about some things in the fall garden. It's not too late to plant some of those quick maturing summer crops or warm season crops, but now it's also the time to start preparing the soil and planting some of our cool season crops that will be coming on when we have the milder days and the milder nights, lower humidity, and we can have some really good quality fall vegetables, particularly the leafy green vegetables and some of the root crops. So that's what I'm doing today, planting in my garden. I'm planting both. I'm planting some potatoes, some beans, some squash, some late cucumbers, and also some early planting of some fall leafy vegetables. As you notice, I've got my soil here, and this is where I'm planting lettuce and carrots today. I've got my soil really cooled off if as much as I can, because that's usually the big enemy of planting some of these fall vegetables is the soil temperatures. The soil temperatures can reach close to 140 degrees this time of the year, and so that's just going to be detrimental to these little seed. So I've come in and I've put a lot of mulch. I've got organic mulches, both compost as well mixed with cottonseed hulls, and I've layered about an inch and a half on top of my soil, and I'm going to make a row into that about an inch and a half deep, right about as deep as that mulch is. And then after I make my little row, I'm going to pack it down a little bit, because this will allow me then just to distribute my seed, my lettuce seed or my carrot seed or whatever little seed I want to, right on the top of that packed mulch, and then I'll come in and kind of gently cover it about 1/4 inch deep so that I don't get it covered too deep. Now what I've done, I've prepared really this soil the night before. If you come out the evening before you want to plant and open up the soil beds, water it down very good, it will cool that temperature down. And so if you feel the soil temperature today, it is really quite cool compared to the soil would have been had I not done that. So now that I've got my beds prepared, let me give you a little bit of tip now as I walk around the other side and start some seeding of my crops. I think it's a good idea if you try to soak your seed overnight. And on mine, I actually have soaked them in the refrigerator in a cool location, because it's not only cooled the seed, but it's also allowed them to get a little start on germination through that soaking process. I've got several types of lettuce today, and we'll be planting in this row a lettuce, Butter Crunch lettuce. I put my label down so I'm sure that I don't forget what it is when I'm beginning to thin or beginning to work on that. Because I have put my seed in water overnight and soaked it, it's kind of difficult to deal with. So I have me a paper towel and a small strainer. I'll just pour that through there. That will get rid of all the water, dump those seed in, and then I will take the other side of the paper towel over and press it well. That will take some of the moisture out and just makes it much easier then to handle the seed. It'll dry the seed out a little bit so they don't stick to your fingers quite as bad. And then I can either gently scatter them along like this, or another way I found that it works very well is just to brush them off the paper. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this little bed up. I'm going to plant several varieties of lettuce today. I'm going to plant some carrots today. I'm going to save a few rows to later on come in and plant some radish and some probably some turnips or mustard greens of some kind, because those can be planted all the way up until about the middle of September, whereas these need to be coming in before the 1st of September. Notice I've also serpentined a soaker hose on my bed, and after I finish planting, I will mist the bed with water so I can kind of press those seed into the soil with the water, and then put a row cover over it to protect it from the heat and the extreme temperature. So I think I'll have a really good stand of these leafy green vegetables before too long, and in a way I get a little sense of I guess, satisfaction in thinking that I may have fooled Mother Nature a little bit, making the plants feel, maybe I fooled the plants, making them think that it's spring instead of fall, or at least instead of the end of the summertime. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish planting these. I've got several varieties of lettuce here. I've got some carrots. I've got a few rows I'm just going to save and plant later, some radishes and perhaps some mustard greens or some turnips or something like that, because they can go in later, maybe even to the middle of September, whereas these that I'm planting today really need to be in by the end of August. And then after I get through planting, we'll go ahead and cover it over with my row cover, or at least mist them in, cover it with my row cover, and then turn on my soaker hose so that I can keep it moist throughout the germination process. When I'm using a soaker hose such as this, I always am cautious of how much pressure from the water comes through these little soaker hoses, because it is just a little soaker hose and water is meant to just barely ooze out. So I like to use a pressure reducer valve. These are available anywhere they sell drip irrigation or trickle irrigation. You know, this right here will reduce the pressure to at least 50 pounds or less at your faucet. So that's always a good idea to do that, is to have a pressure reducer valve on your soaker hose before you use those. It just keeps it from popping out a lot on you. Some of the vegetables we can still grow in the fall garden at this time of the year also are some of the sharp maturing warm season vegetables. And so I'm also today planting, in addition to some cool season crops that I've gotten started, I'm also planting some warm season crops. And one of the things we can grow are potatoes. It's not too late to plant potatoes if you get them in by the end of August. But the most limiting factor with potatoes, next to the high soil temperatures, probably is the availability of seed pieces. You don't want to use those seeds, potatoes from the grocery store, because those often sprout erratically. They don't produce good quality potatoes, and they're just not recommended for use as seed potatoes. And of course, seed potatoes are difficult to find this time of the year. Occasionally, I've actually held over some seed potatoes from the spring in a refrigerated area for the fall, but I'm also using some potatoes that I actually dug this spring. If your potatoes have been dug for 6 to 8 weeks, and they've been in a dry, warm place, and you're beginning to see some of the little eyes beginning to enlarge, you know that you can go ahead and replant those. And so that's what I've done. I've picked some of my better potatoes from the spring, cut those into about an inch, about an ounce or an ounce and a half size seed piece, and I've allowed those actually to dry. They should be allowed to dry or cure in a cool location for about 3 to 5 days. So I've had these pieces in the house under where it's been air conditioned for about 4 days now, and you can see that they have begun to kind of what we call suberize or dry out a little bit. I don't want to use those though, however, that I've scarred or that I've damaged in the digging process, and because those are going to begin to rot very easily if you use those. So choose some of your better potatoes and some of your potatoes that you can get some fairly large pieces from. I prepared my soil the evening before by watering it down very well, digging a deep trench, putting the water into the trench as well, just to cool that soil down considerably. And then I'm planting early in the morning. And I will put those seed pieces cut side down into the soil like that. And then before I cover those over with soil, like I've already done in a couple of rows here, I'm going to give them a little bit further protection from the high soil temperatures by layering a couple of inches or maybe an inch and a half of good quality straw, weed-free straw, on top of those, and then cover them over with the soil in a little bit of a mound, and then that way that will give them extra protection from the hot sun. I've also gone ahead and already planted beans, which can still be planted till the end of August. These are the bush beans, Blue Lake bush bean. I soaked those overnight. I've also planted some squash and some cucumber that also can be planted this late in the year, and have soaked those seed overnight as well. Note what I have done on this is on the squash and the beans and the cucumbers, I've made the hole or the planting row just a little bit deeper than I normally would, and I will cover that lightly and leave just a little bit of a side on the edge of the row, because that in itself is going to give some protection from the afternoon sun as well. Then I'm going to come in and mulch this entire bed with straw or some sort of a light organic mulch so that it will give it further protection from the heat, and then water it down very well.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.